The sun was beginning to set behind the line of tall pines, painting the forest with streaks of pale orange and fading blue when Ethan Grant slammed on his brakes. The old pickup screeched to a halt on the narrow dirt trail, gravel spitting beneath the tires. There, hidden between the overgrown weeds and fallen branches, was a silver sedan with its headlights faintly flickering, like a heartbeat refusing to give up. For a moment, Ethan just sat there gripping the steering wheel, feeling an odd pull in his chest. Something about that car didn't feel right. He'd driven these woods countless times since moving here with his daughter, but he'd never seen a vehicle this far off the main road. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that restore faith in humanity, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. It helps more people see stories that remind us the world still has good hearts left in it. Ethan stepped out, his boots crunching against the damp earth. The air smelled of pine and rain-soaked soil. As he moved closer, he noticed the windshield was cracked and the side mirror hung by a thread of wire. The car door was locked, and the driver's seat was empty. He circled around, shining his flashlight through the back window, but it was what he heard next that made his stomach twist. A faint, muffled thump, then another. He froze, listening. It came again, soft but unmistakable. From the trunk his heart pounded. No way. He whispered to himself, fumbling for his phone to call 911, but there was no signal this deep in the woods. He tried the trunk handle, locked. Without thinking twice, he grabbed the crowbar from his truck, wedged it beneath the latch, and pried it open. The trunk popped up with a metallic snap, and inside, curled up, gagged and bruised, was a young woman. Her eyes shot open at the sudden light, wide with fear and disbelief. She tried to speak, but only muffled sounds came out from behind the tape. Ethan ripped it away gently and reached for her trembling hand. "It's okay," he said, voice steady but heart racing. "You're safe now." Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please, don't let him find me." Ethan didn't ask questions. He lifted her carefully out of the trunk. She was weak, shaking uncontrollably, and helped her into his truck. Her wrists were bound with frayed rope. Her clothes were torn and streaked with mud. She looked like she'd been there for days. As he sped down the dirt trail toward the highway, he kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, noticing the fear still etched on her pale face. She didn't say much, only kept looking over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to appear from the dark trees behind them. When they reached the small-town hospital, Ethan carried her inside. The nurses rushed to help, calling for the police immediately. She was taken to the emergency room while officers began asking Ethan questions. All he could tell them was what he'd seen. An abandoned car, a trunk, and a woman barely alive. It wasn't until hours later, after giving his statement, that he learned her name, Mara Lewis. Mara had been missing for 4 days. The police said she'd been abducted after leaving work late one evening. Her car had been found earlier in another county, so no one thought to search this part of the forest. She was lucky. One more day without food or water, and she might not have made it. Ethan sat in the waiting room long after midnight, staring at the white hospital walls. He'd seen plenty of darkness in his life. Tours overseas, loss, heartbreak. But nothing like this. Ethan was a single father, raising his 9-year-old daughter, Clara, on his own after losing his wife in a car accident 3 years earlier. Life hadn't been kind, but he'd built something quiet and steady in their small town. He fixed cars at a modest garage during the day and cooked simple dinners at night. He didn't talk much about his past, he just tried to keep moving forward. But that night, as he drove home under the pale moonlight, something inside him shifted. He couldn't shake the image of Mara's terrified eyes. He wondered how many times she had cried for help in that dark trunk, unheard and forgotten. Days later, the police came to thank him formally. Mara was recovering. They caught her abductor, her ex-boyfriend, a man with a violent history who'd fled across state lines. The officer told Ethan that if he hadn't found her when he did, she wouldn't have survived the night. Ethan nodded silently, feeling both relief and disbelief. He didn't see himself as a hero, he'd only done what anyone with a heart should do. A week passed, then 2. Life began to return to its rhythm. Ethan was under his truck one afternoon, grease on his hands, when he heard a soft knock. He slid out and saw Mara standing there, dressed in a light sweater, her hair tied back, looking healthier but still carrying the weight of what she'd endured. In her hands she held a small bouquet of wildflowers. "I didn't know how else to thank you," she said quietly. "You saved my life." But Ethan smiled faintly, brushing his hands on a rag. "You don't owe me anything." But Mara insisted on staying for coffee. As they sat on the porch, the sunlight filtered gently through the trees, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan noticed something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Mara told him bits about her life, about how she'd been trying to leave behind a toxic relationship, start fresh, move to a new city. She'd always loved the outdoors, she said, and that's what gave her strength to survive those days in the dark trunk. Memories of sunlight through leaves, wind through branches. Ethan listened quietly, feeling her words echo in the hollow spaces inside him that he thought had long closed off. Clara joined them, curious and bright-eyed. She offered Mara a cookie she'd baked herself, and for the first time, Mara laughed. A soft, trembling laugh that made Ethan realize how fragile healing really was. Over the weeks, Mara became a regular visitor. She'd help Clara with school projects, bring groceries when Ethan was working late, and often sit by the fireplace reading while Ethan fixed old engines in the shed. Their connection grew naturally, not from romance at first, but from shared silence, from understanding what pain looked like and how kindness could bring people back from the edge. Still, not everyone in town understood. Some whispered, saying it was strange. A man finding a woman in the woods and then letting her into his home. But Ethan ignored them. He'd seen too much judgment in the world. He believed that sometimes the most broken people were the ones meant to cross paths, to remind each other that life doesn't always stay dark. One rainy afternoon, months later, Ethan found Mara sitting by the window, staring at the forest where he'd found her. She turned to him with tears in her eyes and said, "Every night I still dream of that trunk. I wake up gasping, thinking I'm back there. But then I hear Clara's laughter, or your voice in the kitchen, and I realize I'm free." Ethan didn't know what to say, so he simply placed a hand over hers. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. "None of us are." Life wasn't suddenly perfect, but it was better. Mara found a job at the local library. Clara adored her like an aunt. And Ethan, well, he started smiling again. Some evenings they'd all drive out to the same forest road where he'd found that car, just to remind themselves how far they'd come. The car was gone now, the ground covered in new leaves, nature reclaiming what was once broken. One day, Mara asked if she could take a photograph there, not to remember the pain, but the miracle of being found. Ethan stood beside her, holding Clara's hand, the afternoon light falling gently over them. "Sometimes," Mara said quietly, "life hides the worst moments right before it gives you the best people." And in that moment, Ethan understood. Saving her wasn't just about pulling someone out of a trunk. It was about giving both of them a reason to believe in life again. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps keep stories of hope and compassion alive for others who might need them today. Before you go, comment below with one thing you believe the world needs more of: kindness, courage, or second chances, and why. Because sometimes, one act of kindness doesn't just save a life, it heals too.